The next speaker is Carlo D'Alesio, and he is the man behind that weird violet something machine behind you. And he will talk to us about fragmented nutrition.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, NetSots, for having us here. My intervention represents the work of a team, of course. We are going to deep dive into smaller stuff. So from above the clouds and the overall visions of Davide and Mr. Lightman, we are going to look at a tool to be used from single persons for communities in order to answer to the question, how can single people in a networked society work and produce useful information and produce for themselves and from their community. So most of the people say today, oh, what a beautiful landscape, okay? So if you look at, I mean, just from the tourist's point of view, yes, it is beautiful. If you look at it from the food chain point of view, it's a mess. So everything, the source of food is outside the cities. Tiny roads, you can even see them, actually. So fragmented logistics invading the city, packaging, pollution, and trucks driving. On the other hand, if you look at it from the energy harvesting point of view, like Mr. Leitzman intervention, what I see is a desert, actually. From the energy harvesting, what I see is a desert. From the food chain perspective, what I see is a mess. So, where's the... Let's go deep. So, this is one among many, to be honest. This is ours, but this is one among many phytodrones. What's a phytodrone, okay? So a phytodrone is more than a grow box, and a phytodrone is made from other stuff you don't see here in the physical object. So in this picture here, or in the sample we brought you today. Because this is made of chips, stuff, aluminum, drivers, LEDs, etc., and information. So basically, it is a machine, let's say an almost intelligent machine, who is able to control all the vital parameters for growing your plants, whether they be medical, whether they be for food, whether they are used for genetics or bacteria research and academical programs and research. So what the machine does is executing a program which replicates an environment. So this environment is made of humidity, temperature, irrigation cycles, and of course lighting cycles, and we will see then what does it mean later on. So phytodrone is a technology, so is a tool for the single and for the community as well. So today is mostly a acceptable sunny day, but just please think about the geography of the world. So we are pretty lucky in Italy, but there are a lot of areas with a very limited solar power patterns around the world. So this is what we call a geographical barrier. Also, information is a barrier, because how do you use technology in order to empower people? I mean, one of our ideas is that maybe one day the average Joe will not be sit on a couch being scared by TV, but the average Joe will be a much more evoluted person. So at least that's something we hope so. And then we had, up until today, because in the last year we have, and maybe you saw them online, a rise of various producers who are into phytodrones. We had this technological barrier, which was represented by lighting technologies, because before the LED and before the what we call solid-state lighting, which is commonly known as LEDs and lasers and other stuff, basically lighting was developed and implemented for us, for the human eye, for us to be able to see. The recent exploits of LED technologies actually made possible tailored application for other photoreceptors, because we are not alone in this planet, such as plants, for example. So, even though I'm personally a lighting specialist, so I have no doubt that the humans will never be able to replicate the sun spectrum, okay? This is something which is given, and it's something really tricky to be reproduced. What we had up until now was the sun and the artificial light sources. So this is an example of emission of conventional light sources. And then over the years, other technologies came in. So these are fixed spectra. The problem is this is the sun, which gives us almost everything we need, okay? And these are the absorption patterns, of the photosynthetic activities of a plant. What is possible now is to, with phytodrones and with LED technology and with proper coding, reproduce the very important part of the solar spectrum which plants use for photosynthesis. Just to give you an example, we do not have a green peak here. Basically, the leaf you saw before, it is green because it's reflecting to your eyes, the green radiations, okay? Also, the LEDs technologies meant that less heat is generated into the growing chamber. So the growing chamber basically can be smaller. You can have it in your home. You can do a single module for yourself, but then you can figure out a technology on how to scale it for communities and for research. And this here, this area here, is that funky, let's say, light you see there. That pinkish light is actually the addition of this spectra, which is, let's say, what the plant needs to properly grow. This is going too deep, actually. So we had technology, period, okay? So technology is for the technologist. So we have another barrier. So we destroy the geographical barrier. So nighttime, no problems. Harsh environments outside, desert, cities, underground, metros. It's gone, okay? We have the technology. We destroy the geographical barrier. We have the technology. We destroy the technology barrier. The last important thing, probably the most important one, is knowledge, okay? So one of the other pillars that David talked about before, this is a machine, okay? I'm gonna show you. And we saw before that is a parametric machine. So it does have an interface, and it does have parameters which you can set. So you basically have your garden and your plants, and for each phase of the plant's life cycle, okay, you can set temperature, humidity, pH, EC, lighting settings, night times, daytimes. Well, that might seem complicated and tricky, but basically we developed an interface to let the majority of people easily configure this stuff. But if you have parameters, you have control, and then you have also a language, because at the end of the game, you can save your growing program if you are happy with it, with your cultivation, in order to repeat it, or you can share it with other users who owns the same machine. So if you are a user who have the, let's say, the will and the knowledge to set up such a machine, you are free to configure it by yourself and to test and fine-tune your performance. And you contribute to raise the bar to the machine performance. So it's the human who is raising the bar of the machine performance, which is different from the opposite. On the other hand, if you are a user who has basically the will but not the knowledge to operate such a machine, you can rely on the crowdsourced information. You just download a file from the community who is suited for your species. And this is how we believe is a sustainable scheme for imagining technology. So again, this is about fragmented nutrition and empowering also the average Joe. So by technology and also by knowledge. On another scale, this is that's a everything I'm talking about. All the project is open source, by the way, and online we have the repository with the source files. So everything is open, hardware and software. Period. I forgot this very important important aspect. So on another hand, we scaled up this technology platform for academic research, and this is a custom order we carried out by request of the National Museum, Italian National Museum of Science and Technology, Leonardo da Vinci in Milan. We just make Meg's big brother, so it's is actually 2.5 meter in height, and has this control panel here, which is just the replica of what you will find on your mobile device, tablet or smartphone, for using the small Meg. And they're using it in their genetics laboratory because they basically store data. And when they have to repeat of giving or to give parameters to one of their process, then they go back and reanalyze that. So they have a platform of data and information. They're also using it for formation, for example, and for further extending knowledge. Actually, a couple of catchy slides, let's say, for what is about to come. Of course, this is that's provocative. So this is about, as many of you know, integrating the let's say contained environment, so microenvironment for having sustainable spaceship or extra or space colonization, in which, as NASA stated 6 or 8 months ago, actually they found that it's something also useful for the emotions of the cosmonauts and the astronauts. So cultivating something which is living with you in this kind of harsh environment is something that is useful also for your psychology, actually. Sarah, of course. You want me? No. Okay. And again, another picture of an hypothesis of extraterrestrial systems. Replicating a microclimate is another of the keys of this kind of system. So basically, you can do it on Earth, like, for example, studying and replicating an African climate and putting it into a chamber in the US, for example. So you can do it geographically, but we'd like to think that in order to progress to the future, you have to look back at the past. So we had input from researchers. Actually, we are working also with Italian universities. So along with the museum, we are working for the, let's say, agronomy faculty of Milan, which is one of the most prominent in Italy. One of the ideas was is there a way to replicate environment conditions which are gone? So microclimates which are no longer here, in order to making possible some research which was not possible a few years ago. Thank you. I'm done. If you have any questions.
So, questions? Come on, you've seen the dinosaurs. Oh, there is one there.
Hi. As you said, we are in Italy and we have the sun normally. So why a casalinga di Voghera should buy a block for phytoplants? Are there normal use cases for it? Thank you.
Let's say that we are talking about existing machines that nowadays may be used for, let's say, high valuable crops, which nowadays could not be the case of a tomato or a basil, okay? But one day may be. So today we do have plants that have sense to be grown there, okay? One day the things may change. Again, this is not just about the machine, this is about the empowering process of the user, okay? This is one way in which we can actually elevate, maybe, in some aspects, the casalinga di Voghera, because I do not believe that you can start an entire implant on politics starting from the casalinga di Voghera, to be honest, because it's a weak starting point. So maybe one of the aim of Nectar Society may be also the one to start from people in order to elevate them. So starting from the people themselves. Going back to your question, I hope I answered. You got the message. So maybe one day, tomato would be valuable. Also, to give you a practical example, I will talk about legal drug plants in the US, for example, which are worth the cost and the operation of the machine nowadays. Or collectors plants, or rare plants for high-end restorations. So something which is worth the cost and the hassle for today. Tomorrow, maybe, maybe more commodities would be, let's say, worth the hassle. And of course, the technology curve of this kind of machines will enable people to have less expensive machine and augmented user experiences. I mean, to have them to be operated as easily as possible. Thank you.
We will try to answer all the questions, so I ask you to keep the questions short and the answers as well.
Okay. As you know, environment is not only light. Environment is made of gas, soil, and soil nutrition. How you deal with these things?
So we have two versions. Even though lighting is accountable for 55% of the development of a plant in such an environment, the other stuff is is monitored, and you can operate on this. For example, the first slide I showed you is the open source version, which we have online. Is based on soil cultivation, and you have a central irrigation system with a pump which is centralized in the brain of the machine, and you can set up the frequency of the distribution of the irrigation. And we have an upgrade which allows you on an NPK scheme of nutrition also to dilute into the water the NPK nutrients. Okay, so you can regulate the time, the intensity, and the nutrient distribution into the irrigation part. Almost the same, I would say almost the same, I'm trying to be concise. It is happening here in this machine, which is hydroponics. So it's another style, let's say, of conceiving the... so we have sensors to give the machine feedback, okay? And then we have controllers to give inputs to the plant. And we are doing this with the EC monitoring and pH monitoring in the hydroponic version. And then we have temperature sensor. I mean, is an agglomerate of existing technology. Okay, it's something that raises from the arising technologies. So having a chip sensor or a chip LED is almost the same. So everything comes from a platform of existing technologies. But maybe we can have a chat later on the machine.
I know there is a question over there, and it will be the last one.
How much will it cost me to build my own machine?
So let's say that what you are seeing here is, let's say, is a less powerful version. Something we are thinking for, let's say, consumer grade, general public, which should be around 2K. The one you will find as an open source on the website, it will take you from 2 to 3K, but it's a very, let's say, high-end kind of machine. Online you have everything. You have mechanics, electrical schemes, bill of material, list of online retailers, and this will cost you, except for your work, let's say from 2 to 3K. But while the consumer version, let's say, is one block, I mean, to be honest with the open source fabrication, the one you see on the website is scalable. So you have the shell, which is independent from the light engine, which is independent from the growing platform. So you can dilute your economic effort in many steps. So it's not something designed for everything you see, hence the raw aesthetics you saw in the first slide is off-the-shelf components. Easy to find, affordable, period. And it's scalable investment-wise, let's say.
Thank you, Carlo.